The camera sweeps in on a vast white plain. Your character, Mr. Wolf, struggles against the brutally cold winds, gradually gaining speed as more and more blood appears on the chalk-white ground. Now in a full sprint, you arrive at a desolate town, the scene of a massacre. This stylish introduction is both gorgeous and apt in how it sets up the following hours of gratuitous bloodshed and stylistic visuals. Hitting a lot of the same notes as its genre's predecessors, Bloodroots aims to intertwine fast-paced slaughter with a deeper narrative and is mostly successful in that effort. At the heart of any successful isometric slaughter fest, as games like Ape Out and Hotline Miami have triumphantly proven, is the challenge of repetition. Being able to repeat a level over and over again until you know it inside and out, all without getting bored, is a challenge of game design in itself, but it's one that Bloodroots masterfully overcomes. There are no random elements here. Weapons, of which there's a staggering variety, are meticulously positioned for maximum killing potential. Enemies are dropped in deliberate numbers in front of weapons with respective durability, all for the sake of allowing the player to cut through them as quickly as possible. This endeavour isn't for the sake of ease, of course. While it might seem counterintuitive to the difficulty of the experience, it's in fact beneficial to the game's learning curve. Some weapons, like a fish or boot, only have one hit before they expire. Something like a cutlass or any variation of the sword from popular culture, which are perfectly placed across the levels to season the game's wide arsenal, will usually have 3 hits apiece. If you were to use these fastidiously placed weapons effectively, you could very well glide through a level like a knife through butter, but getting there takes time and practice. Perhaps chief among the examples of habitual level design Bloodroots offers would be its boss battles. Each of the 3 acts has one, and each is vastly different from the last. One of the most impressive things about this experience, even amongst its peers, is its willingness to experiment with style. The first of the 3 boss levels, for instance, takes on the form of something akin to an endless runner. The level is constantly moving forward as I struggle to keep up, enemies coming at me as I attempt to chase down the head honcho. Barrels are placed strategically throughout the length of the arena, one after the other. In the beginning, I fail to maintain my pace, but as I learn the positions of the barrels and the ways in which I need to move, I start to make better progress. The cycle continues until I eventually chain together a bloody batch of enemies and roll my way to the finish line. This general philosophy is what makes the experience enjoyable. Death feels like a stepping stone towards the perfection of a level, and for the most part that progression feels like motivation to keep going. There are a few slip-ups with frustratingly designed movement in ice-covered stages, causing the character to veer off in one direction as you lose control, but those are few and far between. Most areas are set up the same, with several smaller levels within each larger chapter. It's a formula prone to eventually becoming repetitive, but those fears are quickly diminished by developer paper cult's anomalous approach to style. Even from Bloodroots' opening, it's immediately apparent how the game's art style contrasts with its lust for blood. The visuals strike such a heavy cartoon-esque tone that it's almost startling when you arrive at a burning town, bloodied bodies strewn every which way. Even once the brutality sets in, the cinematography on display is rather astonishing. Finishing the final enemy in a zone allows for an elegant finishing animation which varies depending on your weapon of choice. Further, on the odd occasion you're presented with a cutscene, the game often uses a striking visual style to demonstrate drama. One memorable scene in particular, early on in the game, suddenly diverts to a palette of black and red, and opens up the letterbox for a more salient presentation, thus incorporating more simplistic visuals as a bullet draws a line across the screen before hitting Mr. Wolf, leaving him for dead. This is the act that fuels the densely engaging story. What appears to be a mindless hack-and-slash pastime on the surface holds deeper merit in actuality, and Mr. Wolf will do most anything to hunt down his elusive Mr. Black Wolf, the man who left him in the proverbial gutter. The names are rather on the nose, but they effectively illustrate each character's unique traits. Mr. Boar is greedy and pines for wealth, for instance, while Mr. Wolf will tear through entire armies to find his revenge. The perpetual onslaught is one typical of the Western genre, the genre heavily contributed to by Bloodroots' elegantly whistling score. but it also serves as an abundant undertone for the whole story. The expertly crafted dialogue shows Mr. Wolf's old comrades berating him in tow of his lust for revenge, but all he sees is red. While Bloodroots is diligent in its focus on gameplay, it's never lost when it comes to style. Popular culture references are weaved into the gameplay as often as bodies are littered throughout each level, while the visual and musical style stands truly inimitable amongst its peers. Bloodroots is a game that isn't afraid to experiment, and more often than not it pulls off a distinct style and an undercurrent of tragedy not often found in other games of its kind. For all that, this is a game that achieves what it sets out to and encapsulates the very best of its gradually emerging genre.